Hi, everybody. This is Minette Kennedy with Humanities Team and the Evolution Revolution, the storm before the calm. And I'm glad to see so many people here and as well. And take it away, Linda. Linda's our reader. More.
Reader. Nanette, you cut out.
Okay, Linda.
Okay.
All right, take it away, Linda.
This element is too low, you are more close-minded.
What? Was that a comment? Okay, I'm going to start. So we are on page 97. This is The Storm Before the Calm, Conversations with Humanity, Book 1. This is conversation number 15. Oh, my darling Clementine. I think you're going to like some of the ideas about how we might collectively create our future, ideas that I believe God inspired. But I've not come here to simply post a notification to humanity about what is best for us and what we are now expected to do. But if you believe that you really did receive these ideas from God, why would you not want to make them a notification? I could understand your modesty or your reluctance if you felt that these were your ideas. But it is your notion that God's thoughts about life and how to make it work are not good enough to simply be laid down as dictums? And if they truly came from God, should they not be dictums? No. First, God does not lay down dictums. That would violate the first condition of life, which is freedom, or as some religions have labeled it, free choice. Freedom is a fundamental condition. It is an isness which God would never or could overrule or dismiss. God cannot rule an isness. God is the isness. The isness will not, does not, and cannot unis itself. God is freedom, the perfect expression of that. So the last thing God could or would do is demand something or require something or force something. God, by God's very nature, could never be a dictator. Second, to answer the question as it directly relates to me personally, if I were trying to inspire humanity to seriously consider the ideas I've placed here by using its free choice, the last thing I would do would be to insist that these ideas are right or best, even if I do believe they came directly from God. God does not lay down dictums. The very reason that most of the ideas that most of the religions have put into the world have not worked is that most of those religions have declared most of their ideas to be right and best. Nothing stops humanity from adopting an idea faster than being told that the idea dare not be opposed because it is right and best. The fascinating thing about humanity is that we want to figure things out for ourselves. We don't want to have someone telling us what to do. But be honest, don't you want humanity to adapt their ideas? They're not my ideas. Okay. What you claim to be God's ideas, don't you want humanity to adopt them? Don't you believe in them? I believe in them, I assure you, or I wouldn't be putting them out there. But the fact that I believe in them does not translate in my mind into a requirement that you should believe in them. This is the problem with most religions. But if you don't feel that I should adopt these ideas, why bother us with them? Why propose them? I'm right back to the original question. So then let me go right back to my original answer. I'll try to find different words. The purpose of proposing an idea should be simply that, to propose it, not to impose it. There's a vast difference between proposition and imposition. The difficulty with many of the world's religions and so many of their followers, and many political parties too, for that matter, is that they too often seek to impose their ideas, their views on others. If they simply proposed rather than imposed, there would be no problem. There would also not have been the Crusades, the jihads, the ethnic cleansing, and the countless other horror-ridden and totally unacceptable tactics by means of which, throughout history, one group has sought to overlay its views and ideas on another. Right now, there do tend to emerge certain litmus tests that determine whether a person is loyal to the cause or a team player. As you surely know, litmus is a dye obtained from certain lichens that is red under acid conditions and blue under alkaline conditions. So, if you live in the U.S., are you from a red state or a blue state? We are just one conversation from paradise. If you live somewhere else, are you a member of the red team, conservative, or the blue team, liberal? Be careful of your choice. Be sure about what jersey you put on, because no deviation is permitted in this kind of deeply divisive politics. Individual thinking by members of a group or party is not allowed. Of course, I would like humanity to seriously consider the ideas here, and maybe even adopt a few of them. But I believe that the simple proposing of the ideas should be enough. If they have true merit, the benefit of adopting and embracing them will be self-apparent. If not, the ideas should be dismissed. Now, I could be wrong about many of the concepts and approaches that I'm going to suggest here for inclusion in our new cultural story. People may read them and stamp them rejected. The choice is always theirs. But I'm hoping they'll at least explore the thoughts presented here. That exploration alone, that single civil conversation, can affect a great deal. I said it before and I'll say it again. I believe that we are just one conversation away from paradise. I want paradise for you. I want you to know peace and joy in your life. I wish that for all of us, for your children and for mine and for our children's children. One of my own children's children, granddaughter Clementine, was born on the very day that I'm writing this. So I'm yearning for this future. My yearning for this future has taken a very poignant energy for me today. Will you join me in the quest to create paradise for Clementine and for her children's children and for yours? End of chapter and end of section, looks like.
Okay. I have not so good connections. So if anybody would like to discuss what Linda just read, go ahead and please start. And hopefully next week I'll have my new computer. Over.
I'll just say thank you, Linda, for reading, and very apt chapter, I would say. Thanks.
I do like that this chapter makes, you know, freedom. Like I don't know about every religion, but I was raised Catholic, Well, apparently my words are not awake yet this morning. I was raised Catholic and certainly raised with the notion that humans have free will, but we still better right to make the right choice or we're going to go to hell, and we have to go to, you know, confession and tell the priest everything we did wrong and do our penance if we, you know, maybe don't want to go to hell. So that whole free will thing kind of seemed like a trap, you know? It's a trap. You're given free will, but then he dares you to do the wrong thing with it so he can send you to hell, right? So I do like this version of free will better. I wanted to share that. Thank you.
You're so funny, Mary.
Anybody else?
I just like that we are just one conversation from paradise. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's a
I
very
would agree.
thought-provoking. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I would absolutely agree on that. We are just one conversation away. It's just a snap of the fingers and the world could turn on its heels. I was having a conversation earlier today about giving up smoking, and because I'm an ex-smoker, and I know how difficult it is to give up smoking, but I also know that you can do it in a snap of the fingers and the blink of an eye, because that's how I did it. It's a total turn of your thinking. And that is how simple it is, and that is how easy the world could change overnight. Thank you.
Yeah, and I liked a little bit about isness, because I think it really relates back to the saying that I shared a couple calls ago from Matt Kahn. Hello, divine I am, hello. Because we are the isness, right? We are each God in form. And so when we embrace that, we become free to experience life as God would have us experience it, which is really different than how our ego would have us experience it. Over.
I agree with what you say, Angela and Linda. One of the things that I think is very interesting is I studied world religions when I was in my undergraduate years, and Soren Kierkegaard would say God is, and he would say you need to stop right there, because if you say anything after the word is, you diminish God, because God is, you know, God is, period. And in that class we came up with isness is God's business. and we can just, you know, leave it at that. I mean, for conversation's sake, we talk more about what we think God is, but I thought it was a very interesting piece of information from Kierkegaard. Over.
Now I don't know who's funnier, you or Mary.
We're in a race. Anybody else? Or
I
should
have
we...
something.
Okay, go ahead.
I have something to say. I think I've been doing isness for a while, but the thing is, what about paying the bills? I've been thinking, oh my God, have I been sitting on my laurels? Oh my goodness. The practicalities of life, the real life. How do we live the God life and the life of paying the bills?
You write an angry letter to God and he'll reply you. Just
Send
as
me
Neil
some
did.
money. I'll put it out there.
You know how things always work out, though. I mean, that's the answer to that.
Yeah.
If you give it up to God, it always works out. Not that you can't, you can't become like a blob and not write the checks for the rent or the utilities. But in terms of where that money's going to come from to pay those checks, that's the part you give to God, right? Because it does always work out somehow.
Okay, Linda. Please God.
The thing is, Anne, the money is actually there. It's all there. It's all there for you. It's the pot is there. It's whether you
bring it in.
It's the intention that allows you to receive it.
And the faith.
Say again?
And the faith.
And the faith. But it's all there. You already have it.
Right.
Someone from our Monday morning group said, her conversation with God on things like this is, okay, God, you created me and I created this. I'm giving it back to you. Now it's your turn, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Like the old saying of being in a boat with God and say, God, you take the oars, my arms are tired.
Yep.
Oh, good. Let it arrive here.
It's already on its way. Thank you already.
Oh, thank you, Shabana.
Or Shababa, as your new name says in the chat window.
Exactly. And Mohan forgot to say something. If you're going to write a mean, angry letter to God, make sure you get exactly the same type of paper that Neil did.
A yellow legal pad.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
Otherwise,
right. That's right.
But there's something to be said about anger. It's a friend of ours in our Sunday group mentioned that he uses anger as a way to communicate, but he uses the emotion of anger, but he's actually not very angry, and he gets a response. He gets an answer to his question through anger. So there's something to be said about that, as long as you don't stay angry, in your communications with the divine. Angela, were you there when we mentioned that? I think Angela was there.
I wasn't there for that bit.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how you could be angry and not be angry, if you know what I mean. I don't have that skill as yet. How to appear angry and not be angry. That's acting, isn't it? That's acting skills.
Well, I think he was. The emotion is anger, so I guess he was angry, and he used it. But it's not that he stayed angry. I don't know how. I don't know. He explained it better than I did.
I asked Neil about anger a couple of weeks ago in his advanced integration call, and he said, and I don't remember which book it is, but in one of the books, God describes anger as one of our tools. as a
Okay.
tool. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, but that was his response.
Well, there's another thing that I've found very useful. Just plain gratitude. When I sit down and count my blessings, I'm neither angry nor sad. I'm just in awe.
Yeah, and I agree, Shabana. And what I'm feeling and what I'm observing as well is that we are in a time of great change. And the role that anger used to play in like the 3D world is, I don't think, the same role that it plays, it even exists in the 5D world. This is what I struggle with. If we are each individuated aspects of divinity in form, I'm sorry, but what is there to be angry about, right? I cannot wrap my head around it.
I think
If we are each God, why, God is not doing things to make himself mad, right? It doesn't make any sense to me. So even the things that are disturbing in the world they are a result of God and God's choices and actions. And I think there's so much wisdom to be gained from digging in on that. But it's like most people don't have the tolerance to be able to say it's okay. What's happening is okay because it's all divinity in action. It's for our lesson. It's for our purpose. It's for our experience. And I don't mean lesson like teaching us something because we were bad. Like all of those structures, I really see falling away in terms of how this is unfolding.
I have to tell you a little story, which is funny, but true and powerful, because I think it's illustrating what this book says. I wish I could figure out which way to wave my book. I know that I am divinity incarnate, and I live in Canada, which has become exceedingly expensive, like sending a parcel. It's a big country, and it used to cost close to nothing to mail big, heavy parcels, and now it's costing a fortune. So I sent one parcel, which was, the price of the postage was about 8 times more than the contents. So I said to God, this is, like I said to me, I'm God. I said, no more postage. I'm tired of it. And my daughter was having her first wedding anniversary. And so I said, you have to figure this one out. I'm giving it to you. It's your problem. And suddenly it occurred to me that I would buy an antique lamp. And suddenly I heard that one of my friends had a daughter who was going to the city where my daughter lives. So didn't this woman show up and take the antique lamp for free? And not just that, she was happy to do it. So if I'm not God, who is? Ask I in absolute humility.
And
I
it
love
all
that,
worked out.
Shabana. I was just going to say, I've got a friend in Nova Scotia who sends me a birthday present and a Christmas present every year. So that's some interesting information for me there. Thank you.
But also notice the energy with which she said it. When you're talking about the whole anger thing, it's like she was fed up. And she's like, God, you fix this because I'm fed up. I think that you know, from what my teachings that I've studied on the subject is God responds to the sort of passionate intention. Like if you say, oh God, I want this or that, but you're wishy-washy about it, the odds are it's not going to happen. But that's where that anger thing comes in that I think Mohan was talking about. It's like an energy of a passionate kind of feeling, you know? Um, and what I wanted to say about that, the energy thing and where the anger thing and where it fits in, I think goes back to that quote that Angela has mentioned and Mohan shared with us last time, the full long quote about how evil helps us to understand what we want and don't want and who we want to be. I think that having an anger response to things in the world that we don't like helps us understand what we do and don't want and who we want to be. And like I know that a lot of times my anger response comes up because of what I see as injustice. And yes, everything is perfect from a 5D perspective because it's all this divine play working itself out. And from a 3D perspective, there's a lot that I can find to get angry about when I see people being treated unfairly as I see it, you know, and that's all my perspective, but like I have this perspective that everybody deserves to have a certain minimal standard of life, you know. But then the energy of anger, it's what we do with that. And I have a friend, Vito Mucci, whose whole thing is processing emotions and how most of us are not really taught how to do that. Like we just have emotions and then they run us wild rather than us harnessing them as the tool that Linda says, Neil says anger is, right? Anger, it's a reaction. But if we look at what's going on, you know, oh, someone said something that really makes me mad. Oh, well, that's because I think it's unfair to these people. It's like you don't have to, so many of us, and I include myself, you get angry and you just react and spew it. You know, you spew toxicity. That is not what anger is for. Anger is for to feel whatever the thing is, and in my case, it's this injustice thing, and then go, okay, what might really work with this? You know, how do I process my feelings of injustice? And then what can I do in the world? You know, it's like clearly spewing at those people who specifically said the thing is not going to help the situation. So for me, it's been about learning how to communicate with love, you know, even when I'm feeling, well, I might not do it right when I'm feeling rah, 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 rah. I might process the rah, 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 and then tune into my love heart and say, well, you know, why do you think that people don't deserve to earn enough money to live on? So there you are. That's my take on all of that stuff. Thank you.
I wanted to add something to that, Mary, because I was immediately thinking about when my children were much smaller. They're all adults now. And I can remember getting angry with them because for whatever reason, sometimes it took me to get angry for them to stop and listen. You know, like, oh, well, now she's mad. We better be quiet and follow the rules or whatever it is. So it's an interesting dynamic. You know, and because I didn't do a lot of yelling and screaming at my kids, when I would, it was like, whoa, you know, we pushed the wrong buttons there. So I think it can work for you. If you did it all the time, it wouldn't work. At least that's the way I see it. Over.
I think this might be a good time for me to just mention that Mohan shares a link which I mentioned earlier regarding President Trump, and thinking on the anger that surrounds him and the evil that we talk about, because I've heard someone say earlier that he's evil. I would just encourage you to listen to that link. Just listen.
I'm really
And I would
to
also just want to
Thank you.
say one thing, Shavana. One other thing that CWG tells us is, I have sent you nothing but angels.
I think the link was maybe shared before I was on the call because I don't see it in my chat.
Yeah, I don't either.
Well, he's got to be an angel because he doesn't look like one.
Well, while Mohan is doing that, and you are on mute. There you go.
It's there now, right? For everybody to see?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Cool.
Okay. Anybody else want to throw something out there?
Yeah, I was just going to say that somewhere in this passage it says proposing something is much more useful than imposing it. And I was thinking about that all the way through, and I was thinking it's not just proposing an idea, it's also proposing it and then listening to people's response. Because I think we still all need to learn to listen to each other. For me, that's the missing link. Over.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have issues with that too sometimes. So.
Thanks for saying that, Sarah, because I absolutely felt the same about that, and it really resonated with me personally at the moment, because I feel like I have so much to say, and I feel so passionate that I feel like I am imposing myself, and that's just, you know, how I feel. But I just need to speak my truth. So, and I appreciate you all for being here to allow me to do that. Thank you.
That was a very nice thing to say, Angela. And I think been around long enough. For those of you who have not been around as long, it's been years. Seriously, years plural for a lot of us. And one of the beautiful things about it, and we're always welcoming the new, but we've gotten to a place where we can dare to go naked, quote unquote, and not be, I'm not afraid of the judgment, you know, like what somebody might say. But anyway, thank you for bringing that up, Angela. Over.
Nanette, I feel like you're warming up to get Linda to read a little bit more. So I'm going to ask if I can do the meditation right now, because I'm quite concerned about Anne Darby. I want to include her in the meditation quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Is that okay with everyone?
No answer is a good answer.
That's what I usually get. Lord God, you already know that we're all God, and what I'm going to say is known to everyone, but I'm going to say it anyway. Anne Darby is on your payroll, as are every one of us, and we're all God. So we're thanking you already that she's got more than enough. It's already here, and we praise you for it. And thanks for supplying everyone else, as you always do. Just make us aware of it. Amen.
Amen.
And please and thank you, God. Okay.
Thank you. That was very nice. Please and thank you. And Linda, I'm going to go ahead and begin reading the next one.
Sure. Okay, so now we are on conversation 16. The incredible story we're dealing with now. Okay, so now we're going to get down to it. We're going to look now, right here, at the old cultural story of humanity that I keep harping about. The story that's been creating all the problems. I touched on this ever so briefly at the very outset of our time together here. I said that I just wanted to look at it quickly and then get to solutions fast. But now I want to expand on what I said then, as I promised that I would do. Because now we know that many of our solutions can be. We've talked about conversation as a tool for change. We've talked about focusing on these conversations on the 7 simple questions. But we must be very clear what the holdup has been so that we can finally break the logjam. The wrong medicine for the wrong illness. The situation we find ourselves in as we move more deeply into the 21st century is that we are coming up with the wrong medicine for the wrong illness. What we think is wrong with us is not wrong with us. So what we hope is the solution is not the solution. The biggest difficulty in the world today is that we continue trying to solve our problems at every level except the level at which the problems exist. We try to solve our problems as if they were political problems because we are used to using political pressure on this planet to get people to do what they don't want to do. We hold discussions, we write laws, we pass legislation, and we adopt resolutions in every local, national, regional, and global language and assembly, and we can think of to try to solve the problem with words. But it does not work. Whatever short-term solutions we may create evaporate very quickly, and the problems reemerge. They will not go away. The biggest difficulty in the world today is that we continue trying to solve our problems at every level except the level at which the problems exist. So we say, okay, these are not political problems and they cannot be solved with political means. They're economic problems. And because we are used to using economic power on this planet to get people to do what they don't want to do, we then try to solve the problems as if they were economic problems. We throw money at them or withhold money from them, as in the form of sanctions, seeking to solve the problems with cash. But it does not work. Whatever short-term solutions we may create evaporate very quickly. Problems reemerge. They will not go away. And so we say, okay, these are not economic problems, and they cannot be solved by economic means. They must be military problems. And because we are used to using military might on this planet to get people to do what they don't want to do, we then try to solve the problem as if they were military problems. We throw bullets at them and drop bombs on them, seeking to solve the problems with weapons. But it does not work. Whatever short-term solutions we may create evaporate very quickly, and the problems reemerge. They will not go away. And so having run out of solutions, we declare, these are not easy problems. No one expected that they could be fixed overnight. This is going to be a long, hard slog. Many lives will be lost in trying to solve these problems. But we are not going to give up. We are going to solve these problems if it kills us. And we don't even see the irony in our own statement. After a while, however, even primitive beings of very little consciousness become tired of the killing and the dying of their own sons and daughters in a battle, and their own women and children and elderly in the line of fire. So after enough killing has been done with no solution in sight, they say it is time to call a truce and hold peace talks. And the cycle begins again. We're back at the bargaining table, back to politicking a solution. And peace talks often include discussion of reparations and economic recovery. And so we are back to money as a solution. And then these solutions fail to work in the long run, we're back to bombs again. And on and on and on it goes. And on and on and on it has gone throughout human history. Only the names of the players have changed, but the game has not. Only primitive cultures and primitive beings do this. I know that you have all heard the definition of insanity. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting to get different results. We can't seem to change our ways, however, because we are very used to trying to force solutions in our world. Yet solutions that are forced are never solutions at all. They are simply postponements. The great tragedy and the great sadness of humanity is that we are forever willing to settle for postponements in place of solutions. Only primitive cultures and primitive beings do that. Highly evolved beings would never ever settle for a 10,000-year postponement in solving their biggest problem. Here on this planet, we never really faced the largest problem of humanity head on. We refuse to. We pretend we don't even know what it is. So we do our endless dance all around it. And we continue century after century to solve the world's problem at every level except the level at which the problem exists. The problem in the world today is a spiritual problem. It has to do with what people believe. That is what I meant when I said at the very top of this conversation that things are not what they seem. The problem in the world today is a spiritual problem. It has to do with what people believe. It has to do with what they hold to be true about life, about God, about themselves, and about each other. The problem of beliefs creates a condition of hopelessness, helplessness, anger, and rebellion. That condition produces a circumstance. Inevitability produces a circumstance of runaway violence. The problem of beliefs is a problem which all of us have helped to create. This is true because all of us have beliefs. And all of us pass on those beliefs to others, to our children and our grandchildren, and our neighbors and our friends. We join together to create a cultural story. And that cultural story is what creates the conditions which produce the circumstances that we are trying to eliminate and avoid. Yet we cannot eliminate them and we cannot avoid them until we eliminate and avoid the beliefs that created them. And this is something we have staunchly refused to do. I don't think we even know what half of those beliefs are anymore. Well, I'm going to try to fix that now. What we are up against on this planet. Here is humanity's old cultural story as passed on to us by our parents, our teachers, our clergy, our political leaders, and everyone else whom we've counted on to know the truth. They told us we are born into a hostile world run by a God who has things he wants us to do and things he wants us not to do, and will punish us with everlasting torture if we don't get the two right. Our first experience in life is separation from our mother, the source of our life. This sets the tone and creates the context for our entire reality, which we experience to be one of separation from the source of all life. We are not only separate from all life, but from everything else in life. Everything that exists separate from us. And we are separate from everything else that exists. We do not want it this way, but this is the way it is. We wish it were otherwise, and indeed we strive for it to be otherwise. We seek to experience oneness again in all things, and especially with each other. We may not know why exactly, yet it seems almost instinctual. It feels like the natural thing to do. The only problem is there does not seem to be enough of the other to satisfy us. No matter what the other thing is that we want, we cannot seem to get enough of it. We cannot get enough love. We cannot get enough time. We cannot get enough money. We cannot get enough of whatever it is we think we need in order to be happy and fulfilled. The moment we think we have enough, we decide we want more. Since there is not enough of whatever it is we think we need to be happy, we must do stuff to get as much as we can get. Things are required of us to get everything, from God's love to the natural bounty of life. Simply being alive is not enough. Therefore, we, like all of life, are not enough. Because just being is insufficient. There's stuff that we have to do. The ones who don't do the right stuff get to have the things they need to be happy. If you don't do the right stuff in the right way, you don't get to win. Thus, the competition begins. There's not enough out there, and so we have to compete for it. We have to compete for everything, including God. This competition is tough. This is about our very survival. In this context, only the fittest survive. Only to the victor go the spoils. If you are a loser, you live a hell on earth. And after you die, if you are a loser in the competition for God, you experience hell again, this time forever. Death was actually created by God because our forebears made the wrong choices. In Western theology, the myth of Adam and Eve tells us about this. According to the myth, humans had everlasting life in the Garden of Eden. But then Eve ate the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and she and Adam were driven from the garden by an angry God, who sentenced them and all their progeny furthermore to death as the first punishment. Henceforth, life in the body would be limited and no longer everlasting, and so would the stuff of life. Many other cultures have their own origination stories, and most tell the same tale, one of separation from God for one reason or another, and thus the loss of everlasting life. Yet God will give us back our everlasting life if we never again break his rules. God's love is unconditional. It is only God's rewards which are not. God loves us even as he condemns us to everlasting damnation. It hurts him more than it hurts us because he really wants us to return home, but he can't do anything about it if we misbehave. The choice is ours. The trick is, therefore, not to misbehave. We need to live a good life. We must strive to do so. In order to do so, we have to know the truth about God's desires and what he does not want from us. We cannot please God. We cannot avoid offending him if we do not know the right from wrong. So we have to know the truth about that. The truth is simple to understand and easy to know. All we have to do is listen to the prophets, the teachers, the sages, and the source and founder of our religion. If there's more than one religion and therefore more than one source and founder, then we have to make sure to pick the right one. Picking the wrong one would result in us being a loser. When we pick the right one, we are superior and we are better than our peers because we have the truth on our side. This state of being better allows us to claim most of the other prizes in the contest without actually contesting them. We get to declare ourselves the winner in the competition before the competition begins. It is out of this awareness that we give ourselves all the advantages and write the rules of life in such a way that certain others find it nearly impossible to win the really big prizes. We are as a magician who has forgotten his own tricks. We do not do this out of meanness, but simply in order to ensure our victory is guaranteed, as rightly it should be, since it is those of our religion, our nationality, and of our race, of our gender, of our political persuasion, who know the truth and therefore deserve to be the winners. Because we deserve to win, we have a right to threaten others, to fight with them, to kill them if necessary in order to produce this result. There may be another way to live, another thing that God has in mind, another larger truth, but if there is, we don't know it. In fact, it is not clear whether we are even supposed to know it. It is possible that we are not supposed to even try to know it, much less to truly know and understand God. To try is to be presumptuous, and to declare you have actually done so is blasphemy. God is the unseen knower, the unmoved mover, the great unseen. Therefore, we cannot know the truth that we are required to know in order to meet the conditions that we are required to meet, in order to receive the love that we are required to receive, in order to avoid the condemnation that we are seeking to avoid, in order to have the everlasting life that we had before any of this started. Our ignorance is unfortunate, but should not be problematical. All we need to do is take what we think we do know, our cultural story, on faith, and proceed accordingly. This we have tried to do, each according to his or her own beliefs, out of which we have produced the life that we are now living and the reality on earth we are now creating. There's about 4 more pages. Should I just push on? Okay.
Sounds good to me. Sounds good to me.
Okay, I'm going to just keep going.
Yeah.
Now you understand. Okay, that's it. That is how most of the human race has it constructed. We each have our variations, but this is, in essence, how we live our lives, justify our choices, and rationalize our outcomes. And all this made-up stuff did not come out of thin air. It grew out of some very powerful illusions that appear to have been embraced by our species in the earliest days of its cognition. Or, using an analogy I like to employ, we are as a magician who has forgotten his own tricks. All of this has created a world in which its richest countries in 2003 spent $60 billion in order to help the poorest countries address the problems of poverty, lack of education, and poor health, while during the same period spending $900 billion for defense. Let me repeat that. $60 billion to help alleviate global poverty, $900 billion for defense. This led the president of the World Bank to dryly suggest that if the world simply reversed its priority, the cost of defense would never have to exceed the smaller sum. I bring this up here not because I think the solution to the world's problem is economic. I have just made the point that it's not. I bring this up because I believe that if we solved our spiritual problem, we would not need a huge budget for defense. We would quite naturally shift our priorities into spending those defense funds to lift the poor out of the abject misery and hopelessness that produces the frustration and rage that the world now has to defend itself against. People who aren't suffering do not attack others. Yet the sign of a social order that is really failing is when even among those people in the world whose lives are more comfortable, violence is on an upswing. If even those who should be contented are discontented, you know something's wrong. You know that something is fundamentally askew in the way you've got things set up. In short, you know you're in trouble, big trouble. All attack is a call for help. That's what A Course in Miracles declares, and I agree. If one person attacks another, it's because the first person is suffering. Violence is on an upswing, not only on the streets of the Middle East, but on the streets of Europe, not only in the homes of the poor Southeast Asia, but in the homes of the rich in North America, because of poverty. It is poverty that causes suffering. If one person attacks another, it is because the first person is suffering. Poverty comes in many forms. There's financial poverty, physical poverty, mental poverty, or spiritual poverty, but it is all poverty. The human experience of need is widespread and not exclusive to the poor. To put this another way, you could say that the human experience of limitation is not limited. Need, perceived and unmet need, is what causes violence. And need is not solved by economic or political mechanisms. Need is a spiritual ill solved by spiritual means. Put in the spiritual solution, and need is seen for the illusion that it is. Example, you would not let a member of your family die of starvation standing right at your front door. Yet we allow 400 children an hour to die of starvation on a planet where there is more than enough to feed them. The problem is, we don't think of them as members of our family. That's a spiritual problem, plain and simple. We don't know who we are. If we did, we would solve not only the needs of the poor at our front door, but also the affluent already seated at the table, but still striving for bigger, better, more. Points I hope you'll remember. Our old cultural story is unworkable in these days and times. It was probably always unworkable, but the more spiritually aware and spiritually sophisticated we become as a species, the more we realize how unworkable it is. Our ideas about how life are based in simple, correctable, spiritual misunderstandings. Our ideas about how life is based, how life is. This is a difficult sentence. Our ideas about how life is are based in simple, correctable, spiritual misunderstandings. Action I hope you will take. Share our old cultural story with as many people as possible. Copy it or type it out, duplicate it, hand it out at your 7 questions discussion group. Ask the group's members for comments on the story. Are there any parts of it that they or you catch yourself still living? Lead a discussion, write letters to editors, bring to group consciousness the present state of affairs in our world, in which the globe's richest nations spend $60 billion annually to alleviate the conditions that create abject poverty and misery on our planet, and thus lead to seething frustration, anger, and ultimately violence against the rich, and then spend $900 billion to defend ourselves against that anger. End of chapter.
Thank you, Linda. I would suggest that if the beginning of next week's meeting, we can write down and have about this reading and take it from there, but I'm open to other ideas as well.
Can I just mention something, Bob Larrick?
Sure.
Thank you. I appreciated that. You made me think of a Zoom conference I just had with the superintendent of schools, which ties into this, which as well as from an interfaith meeting, and Rabbi Klass mentioned, she says, I think you're right, we don't know how to love each other. And I was saying we need emotional intelligence skills in schools, and character and identity, the idea of people of innate worth, or God-given rights of innate worth or worthlessness. We seem to teach worthlessness, or transmit or communicate worthlessness from our Bibles all too often, but old traditional ones anyway, which is a divide between liberal and conservative, which is the biggest divide. And I'm trying to get very frustrated this new Center for Justice and Reconciliation to deal with better. But those ideas of only to be loved if you're absolutely perfect enough, or from a more conservative, and then conservative, whether they're Jews, Christians, Muslims, don't talk to each other. And the idea of developing a different identity as all God's children of innate worth versus worthlessness. And the need not simply for competition, but which is what I also mentioned to him. He was, the superintendent of schools was emphasizing how competitive the schools are in their testing, etc. But the idea of excellence of character, as good as we can be in time and place reality, and the idea of appreciation and balance in our lives. Particularly, I like this, I think you'd like too, the Pagel.org website, peace, assurance, gratitude, and love, that we need to be so perfect to be loved. But the perfection, we can be more perfect if we're more loving and compassionate and considerate. And in these times of political warfare, what you just spoke of was, and the beliefs, is also the basis of this General Semantics Institute education, man out of World War I failures of manhood of humanity. How do we get there? Science and sanity, to be more specific, and the idea of that we shouldn't be killing ourselves over who's holy. They don't put it this way, but over who's holier than thou. But we both can be right to different extents. And the most important thing, like an MRI, we should, from a multidimensional reality, we move together as friends versus enemies, or the idea of teammates. So thank you for being teammates in a new spirit. And I was thinking of the importance of your spirit and the spirit of this group to the one in our politics and so many of our homes. And it was also what the basis of the Center for Justice and Reconciliation. It's a ministry, more liberal ones. He was saying that even the Christian prophets don't agree. How can some Christians say absolutely it's only one way, when it shouldn't? We need more humility and more compassion and a more loving and consistent was his spirit. And
I'm going to interrupt here.
Thank you.
But thank you for that. And I think we could start next week with a little bit of that at the very beginning, because that's a very good opener for a lot of discussion. But we're running late on being on the call today anyway. So, but thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Thank you. I apologize. My wife needs me for different things. I have troubles.
No
I have
worries.
to be loving to her too.
No worries.
She has her needs too.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for your
Welcome.
spirit.
All right, everybody. We'll, if anybody's got any last minute questions.
I just got one thing I want to say. I was in this little graveyard where W.B. Yeats is buried, and on an old gravestone it says, "An act of human kindness, once set in motion, endures forever."
Oh,
That was
That's
lovely.
beautiful. That's beautiful. So that's a good thing. All right, everybody, we will see each other next week, same time, same place.
Yeah.
I love you all, and thank you, Linda, for reading. And thanks, everybody, for your ideas and thoughts. Until next
Thank
week.
you. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Love you all.
Bye.
Love you all,
Such a
too.
blessed spirit. So much better than our political times. So,
Okay,
thank
bye-bye.
you again.
You're welcome.